Congratulations again to our Urban Visionary Distinction winners. Now we're going to move into a conversation with two international leaders who have shaped national and local mobility transitions firsthand. Drawing from real-world experience in implementing these transitions, our speakers will share what enables large-scale sustainable mobility models and how these strategies can be replicated across diverse contexts. We want to welcome back to the stage Mauricio Rodas, former mayor of Quito, who will serve as our moderator.
Morning, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to invite to the stage Mr. Carlos Alvarado, the former president of Costa Rica, with whom I will have the pleasure to have this conversation today. Please, Carlos. So, today we will explore what is behind the decisions. The very tough decision-making processes that presidents, mayors have to go through to implement bold, ambitious agendas in different fields, and particularly around mobility. And we are privileged to have today with us President Alvarado, whom I can call a true champion of sustainability. During his term as president of Costa Rica, he advanced extremely ambitious initiatives around not only sustainability, but more specifically, how to tackle climate change and build resilience in his country. So to kick off, Mr. President, can you please share with us what the strategy behind urban mobility sustainability was in your term? What were the key components of such a comprehensive approach to advance an urban sustainable mobility strategy?
Well, thanks for your generosity, Mauricio, and thank you all for being here. When we got to government, we realized that in 2018, a big change was ongoing in the planet related to not only to climate change, but a change in about every dimension of human life because of how we were changing transportation, energy, the future of humanity. So we created a plan, a comprehensive plan across all dimensions of life that we call the decarbonization plan. So it's a plan that has 10 pillars, 10 axes from agriculture, transportation, conservation, tourism, all the dimensions to intervene and to make those change. One of the dimensions, very prominently, it's the one related to transportation, private and public transportation, its electrification, and also the improvement of all that's related to mobility. So it's within that comprehensive umbrella that there's a specific plans in those areas. And I say that because we cannot see mobility as an isolated fact. It's connected to human life. People are at the center of this. And that was what we launched in 2019. It became the first decarbonization plan in the planet after the Paris Agreement of 2015. So we were innovating into how to do this.
What do you think were the key factors of success behind that strategy?
Well, a lot was support of people, support especially of young people. Some private sectors saw it as an opportunity, obviously. Some saw it as a menace because we were changing things. But let me give an example of things that went really fast and really well. One was the electrification of the private fleet. Costa Rica's got 99% of its electricity being clean and renewable. Mostly for hydroelectric, but other renewable. So every electric vehicle you plug into Costa Rica is by definition carbon neutral. So we started a very aggressive strategy to bring incentives to buy and import electric vehicles. And as the first year, it was like a novelty, it was like 100 new electric vehicles. But the second year, it was 1,000. And then it kept an exponential growth up until now. Costa Rica is among the first and second in the whole continent of the Americas of more electric vehicles per capita. We're speaking that next year we'll be in the order of thousands new purchases of electric vehicles, which has obviously improved the quality of air, and it's advancing on that direction. But also it's good because through incentives and because electricity has become cheaper than gasoline, more people are, the customer, it's going for those options. And also because of the competition in the field. So that has accelerated not only the improvement of air, but the access to people, to affordable vehicles to transport, and these vehicles being not only cheaper, but more sustainable.
I really want to highlight the importance of having a strategy. And let me share a parallelism with what we did in Quito in that regard. We had something called the Quito 2040 vision, which included a number of initiatives to advance sustainability in our city. And one of the first things we did when I came into office was to measure where our CO2 emissions were coming from. And it turned out that 56% of our emissions were coming from our mobility system. So it was clear that it was there where we had to focus our efforts on, and we did. And that's why we decided to build our metro system, the first one in the city and in the country. We built this metro in a record time of 3 years, becoming the largest infrastructure project in the history of the city. And it was part also of a strategy of decarbonizing public transportation, along with other initiatives to incentivize electric mobility in our city. But one of the things that we encountered, and it was extremely challenging, was the need to coordinate with the national government because the political scenario was really complex. The president was from a different party, and there was political rivalries in Ecuador back then. So that made, for example, getting the funding for our project extremely difficult. So I know that you work very closely with municipalities, with local authorities, which for me is really an outstanding example of what a head of state with vision can really achieve in terms of understanding the importance of local action. Can you tell us a little bit of how that dynamic worked, the one between you and local governments to advance urban sustainable mobility?
Well, there are many similarities with the case of Ecuador. In Costa Rica also, our main source of emissions is transportation. That's why it's so critical to tackle transportation. We were very successful in electric vehicles. In the case of our train, similar to Quito with the metro, it got into those political fights. And I really want to share this in this scenario because sometimes people from private sector or from academia or urban planners say, well, it's evident, here we have some solutions. Why is it that politicians don't enforce them? It's very important to get involved because sometimes it has to do with political rivalry, sometimes it has to do with who's the funders of campaigns. So it's important to know those sources of resistance if we are to get our solutions into the field. One example is our case with the train, similar to Ecuador. We work for more than the 4 years of the administration. We got the first Green Climate Fund loan ever for public transportation for an electric train of 82 kilometers, fully designed, fully funded. Listen to this fact, it's a loan of 40 years, 0% interest rate. That's what we achieved. And we lent we gave the design and the funding to the next government to build. You imagine what the next government will do, right? Well, think twice. They did not build it. And then 3 years later, they present the same project with the same funding to claim what? Ownership. So those are the things we need to deal and handle. I mean, if it gets built, at the end of the day, who cares what name it's carrying? What's important, it's for the people. And I hope it really gets built. But those are the kinds of challenges we face. Now that we were talking about buses, and I saw my friend from Chile get the award, and congratulations for that. Back then, we were competing to do the same with Chile. We did the first trials for electric vehicles, pilots. We worked with the German government, we worked with the Chinese, we flew the pilots. But what happened, again, there was no continuity. So still we have all our fleet carbon based in Costa Rica and not in a very good shape. But what am I saying? There's one thing that's key also to make this happen, and it's not very scientific, but it's very important: perseverance. You have to persevere in order to get the good things going. And I connect with the mayors. The system, how it is, that's very local, because it's not all the same how you organize the hierarchy between national government, local governments, and who's got the authority. We had the willingness, but in our case, we need to work with 82 municipalities. And for example, public transportation, it's not owned by the municipalities, but they need it in coordination to have their cities function. So many will demand finance. We need access to finance to build this. But the transaction cost of coordinating all 84 municipalities to get the finance through local, national government, when you have rivalries of parties between them, it's so complex that the mere bureaucracy of handling that doesn't allow to proceed. That's why I believe it's so relevant to take some power from national government into access to finance and give it to local government. So local government can access the finance and implement the solutions in mobility and in other fields. That mere change, even though it appears letting go of power from national government, it's a fundamental change to improve people's life. That's one of the things we should be cheering and rallying for. Give access to local government into implementing solutions and not have to go by national government.
Well, that's really music to our ears, right? For mayors in the room, that's really great news, Carlos, that you are thinking that way. You mentioned the issue of continuity, which I think is absolutely key. In our case, I left office with 92% completion of the metro project and with a roadmap to start commercial operations in only 6 months. And unfortunately, it took 4 years to start commercial operations of the project. So it took actually more time to operate it than to build it. That was precisely because of different political motivations that affected the continuity of the project and how it could start operating it in a much faster and efficient way. And then you address the issue of finance. I think that we are in agreement that the global financial architecture was designed for countries, not for local governments, which made sense when this happened back in the 1940s under Bretton Woods, when the world was not nearly as urbanized as it is today. But now that cities are at the forefront of dealing with some of the world's most pressing issues, like climate change, like poverty, inequality, safety, etc., it makes a lot of sense to rethink that global financial architecture and make it more cities-friendly, allowing direct access to finance for local governments. You have been thinking about these issues. What ideas do you have in mind? How to make this reform to the international financial system possible to bestow cities and local governments with the necessary tools to advance ambitious urban sustainable mobility initiatives?
Well, I think that's one of the key questions in the current era. We speak about being in a transitioning of orders. You know, we have the post-World War order. But I think when we say we're transitioning, it's an euphemism to say we are in a disorder and we are not sure where we're heading. But that is also an opportunity to design, to rethink that. I think that the current architecture, it's based on a very hierarchical approach in which we have multilateral funding and decisions that cascade to a national government and then they cascade to the local. But I think that's not being that efficient. And when we see it in the challenges, in climate change, but in others, I mean, that phrase that all adaptation is local, it's so real. Adaptation doesn't occur at COP or at the UN. Adaptation occurs in the neighborhoods, in the streets, when people experience their lives. And if we are not efficient enough in those spots, the system is put into pressure because it's not delivering. We see it at the different COP events, lots of big pledges of money. Oh, we pledge billions and trillions, but what is it that communities say? We're not seeing change. Mayors are saying we don't have the finance to do things. So I think we need to flip, or at least make more horizontal, that scheme. And we need to see the power in the multilateral sphere not as a power of control, but as a power that enables and empowers another sphere that's more local, but it's seen as a partner, not as a subordinate. And in this partner is in charge of the delivery and the adaptation. Sometimes we also carry this notion that we're going to design from the top, and in a very industrial way, we're going to scale up solutions. But when we scale up solutions without taking into account the local, we're killing agency in the process. We need to have the local agency that adopts solutions and transforms them and adapt to the will and the necessities. So that flip to a more horizontal system, in which also means letting go of things like power and ego. We're talking with my friend Marvin from Bristol about that. People like the control to say, this is my solution, I made it, I get the reward from it. And that also is becoming very inefficient when people are we're talking in the Pacific Islands, the islands are literally sinking. We're talking about stream heating many places, drought that's driving migration. Well, we need agility to do that. And that it means partnership, not necessarily ownership on top of. I think that's one of the major shifts, but I believe that's the spirit of events like Commotion, to have those synergies across the partners and to enforce quick solutions for people.
I think that we all agree that relationships between national and local governments in many countries of the world will always be challenging. But listening to visionary leaders like President Alvarado is definitely encouraging in terms of realizing that there are ways in which this relationship could be fruitful, based on cooperation, based on a collaborative spirit, and we hope that these words could be disseminated so that type of relationship could be fostered in many places around the world. Thank you so much, President. Thank you for joining this session.